The following transmission contains unencrypted instances of explicit language. Mature audiences are cleared to proceed.
Shall we begin? Let's begin.
Welcome back. This is part 2 of our tradecraft analysis of No Way Out. We set the table last week in part 1. Naval Intelligence Officer Tom Farrell is assigned the task of finding a Russian mole in the Pentagon. The real tricky part is that it's all just a cover-up, witch hunt by his superiors to frame him for a murder he did not commit. It's all actually even more complicated than that, so if you missed out part 1, there's a simple solution. You might want to hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcast app so that you can always stay caught up with us.
This week, we will take on the latter half of the film where the witch hunt is in full swing. We'll also have a chunk of discussion about the weird, dark secret that lies at the heart of the story before we go on to final reviews of tradecraft displayed in No Way Out, right now on Spies Like Us. Like we said, the CID is making moves on their own. So they find out about Nina Becca, a friend of Susan's, and they say, like, yeah, we're gonna go question her. And Pritchard and Tom both, like, for different reasons, kind of jump ahead of that and say, like, no, we'll go see her. Pritchard, for the fact that he wants control of this, well, both of them because they want to control the situation, but for different reasons. So I think it's plus 5 points for both of them. And that got me my best tradecraft number 2. It's kind of a double header. When they meet Nina, I did think this was a little odd. Like, I couldn't exactly tell from, and I watched the scene a bunch of times trying to figure this out. What do you think? Does Nina recognize Tom?
Yes, absolutely.
You're sure of that? Okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell.
Because that's why she starts freaking out. She has, like, her eyes widen up all crazy when she finds out that Susan's dead, and Pritchard saying there was a, like, oh, we think she was sleeping with someone else, and we think that someone else is the one that killed her. So, like, there's, like, a shot of her, like, freaking out and thinking that Tom might have actually killed her.
Okay.
And
well, I mean,
Tom, she's kind of like,
Tom makes an absolute point of putting his face directly in front of her and looking into her eyes, you know, because it seems to me like he definitely wants to find out if she recognizes him or not. Mm-hmm. And if that's not the play, then it's definitely like maybe just an eye signal of like, hey, I know who you are, you know who I am, shut the fuck up. Yeah, which could have gone either way, because he doesn't know shit about Nina. Right? It really could have gone either way. I like the fact he's ready to brain bash Pritchard if she says the wrong thing. That was pretty cute.
Yeah. Yeah, when he's just grabbing the vase.
Yeah. But from that interaction, they do find out she does give up that the man that they're maybe looking for is someone that's been assigned to the Pentagon during the last couple months, which would fit Tom Farrell's profile. Did you have anything else on Nina?
Not really. I just really liked this scene. Like, there was a lot of tension in this scene, and how, I guess, Tom and Nina both kind of eye communicated with. That's one thing I really did like about this movie. The eye glances in the movie, there's a lot of communication that's kind of unsaid, and this is one of them. And so, like, there's like a conversation going on between Tom and Nina while she's being interrogated by, like, she's basically being threatened to be deported by Pritchard, and there's this whole like kind of like eye conversation between her and Tom, and she has to figure out a way to, like, one, not get deported, and then two, not like reveal, hey, by the way, the guy you're looking for is right behind you. So I really enjoyed this scene.
Right. And of course, I'm only thinking of this now that, like, she doesn't take any action, like, after their visit to follow up on her friend's death. She doesn't go to the police or anything. But again, like, that's the whole deporting thing, the whole deportment threat is a good cover for that, which works for me. back at the Pentagon. Plus spy points for, every chance that Tom gets, since he's in charge of like, the different computer analyses that they're doing and all the different databases looking for credit card stuff, blah, blah, blah. He takes every opportunity to kind of very subtly sabotage that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Even though, like, there's one thing, wheelchair guy, we haven't talked about him. We haven't talked about Sam yet. There's one point where Sam says, like, well, we got some credit card stuff, but, like, that usually doesn't pay off to be anything. And Tom says, like, no, you should totally focus that. Put a lot of work into that. But then later in the movie, it turns out the credit card thing does show something does come up. So shot himself in the foot with that one. And this guy, Sam, he's another guy that Tom Farrell's got a prior relationship with. They're buddies from way back in the day. And along the way, in stages, he slowly, like, he goes from just kind of subtly giving Sam, some instructions to kind of maybe telling him to do some slightly less logical stuff to kind of having to say, like, all right, look, it's a big problem and I just need you to trust me, to finally, like, just coming straight out and saying, like, it's me in the picture and you gotta slow it down. And that whole process, it's my plus 5 points, and best tradecraft number 3 of the movie is just the way that he uses not only his clout as his in his position, but also manipulating his friendship with the Sam character to slow that image resolution down, because that image is kind of like the ticking time bomb in this movie.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and this actually made my number one best tradecraft, was Costner basically confessing to sleeping with Susan. Not just for slowing the resolution, but like kind of playing that werewolf game, like where he's like, "Look, I'm giving you a piece of information. I'm a little panicked because I'm going to be a suspect, but this goes a lot bigger than you think it is." And he says something like, "For your own safety, just slow down the resolution like analysis."
Oh, right, and just trust me. Don't ask any questions. It's for your own good that you don't know anything.
Yeah, and he's like, "Look, the person in that picture is me. I'm telling you the information you're looking for, but please slow down while I get more information, because this is much bigger." And so that made my number one best tradecraft. Not just for just slowing down the resolution, but just the way he played the situation, where he was like, "Here's a piece of information that's really important, that you're looking for, but I'm trying to find other information, and it could put you in danger." And I thought that was really well played.
Along the way, now, so he's trying to slow everything down to keep himself safe, but he's also gets a kind of a lifeline, something he can use to extricate himself from this whole situation. And that's the jewelry box, which that's an item during the romance period. They had a thing about it, and he knows that jewelry box was given to Susan by Bryce, who had received it from some foreign diplomat, and that, he confirms with Sam, all needs to be registered so that they can prove that this piece of evidence links Susan and Bryce. I'm not sure it's the most solid, like, field goal, I win the game of everything, of just to connect the jewelry box, but that's what the movie, that's what the movie gives us. What he does with it is cool, and plus spy points. The way he handles it, he gives it to that one little, like, young blonde adjunct guy that's just says yes sir, says take it home, instruct the CIA to get in touch with you, wait for the information that they give you, and don't call me, I'll call you.
Yeah. it's definitely major plus spy points for that whole thing because he's not directly handing the evidence to the CIA. The CIA is kind of just coming across it. That way, it doesn't look like he's trying to shift the narrative. It's just here's something found that
Mm-hmm.
they could get, you know. And I think it's I think that was a really good play on his part.
Although, like I think we mentioned before, like it really should be the FBI that should be doing this, not the CIA.
Yes.
So now Pritchard wants Nina silenced. I forget why. Oh, because
She would be able to connect Bryce with Susan
right.
because she knew that Bryce was fucking Susan.
Right. So then we send Quado and his buddy off to kill Nina, and Tom freaks out, and we get like basically our one significant action sequence in the movie.
Yeah,
Right? It's not an
The big
action heavy
chase.
movie, but it just seemed like they I don't know, seemed like they just wanted something, a car chase,
Right.
some jumping around and stuff. The thing that stands out to me on this sequence, this action sequence, is that they bust out the synthesizers.
Because if the movie wasn't 80s enough, we definitely get a synthesizer scene.
In retrospect, it's such an odd choice. Like, at the time, I guess, like, synthesizers were, like, super cool, cutting edge, and would put the audience at the edge of their seat. But
Right.
now it just, I don't know, it's just very much of its time. And the movie didn't use synthesizers in any other part of the movie. It's just, like, for the action side scene.
Yeah.
Weird. And I keep calling the one guy Quado because, you know, Total Recall. And you remember when we were watching, I was like, when is this guy gonna get a line? Let Quado speak. Let him speak. He gets one line at the end of the action sequence. Like, when he gets the drop on Costner, get the gun to his head.
I think we should go back to the Pentagon, sir.
That's fine. But I'm confused as fuck why Pritchard lets that shit go. Here's the situation. He gave some orders. This other guy that's supposed to be working for him, Tom, just like runs out and goes on a mad, crazy dash to like completely countermand, you know, and stop like what you're trying to have happen.
Mm-hmm.
They have an argument about it, but I felt like Tom should have been in a lot more trouble for that. I think it's my number one worst tradecraft. Richard just says like, all right, just don't let it happen again. Like, fuck that.
Yeah. I think the idea we're supposed to believe is that Tom was trying to save someone's life because he was really upset when he first spotted the goons. He was like, "That's an assassination squad. What are you doing? You sending assassins?" Like he made a big fuss about it, and then he figures out that they're gonna go kill Nina, and so I think that's the idea. Is he goes to save her life because he's like the Boy Scout.
I get a little mitigation off the fact that Pritchard is so like laser focused on the problem at hand, and he's also kind of becoming, you know, he's becoming more and more unhinged.
Yeah.
Along the way, but it's weird to me that at this point he can't see what's right in front of his face. That
Right.
I mean, Tom is just actively like diving in front of, stopping him from doing what he's trying to do. That's where I land on that.
Well, I think it's definitely a good number one worst tradecraft, but and the other thing is like Tom is in charge of investigating the murder, so she would be a significant witness. So in his mind, he's kind of doing his duty. I don't know, but I think you're right. It's something's off, and it shouldn't have just been kind of ignored.
I almost feel like the action scene was just kind of like shoved in there because maybe some executive said, "Wait, there's no action scene in this movie," and they were like, "Oh, okay, well, we'll come up with something for you."
Yeah.
We'll put something in there. Now, in addition to, again, like, so Tom's got two jobs. He needs to slow the investigation, mainly on resolving the photograph, but he's also got to get this jewelry box linked to Bryce. And he can't, I think he first asked Sam, like, wouldn't it be in there? And the guy's like, yeah, they have it in their records over in the State Department, but they've all gone home right now. And this is early, before Tom has fully divulged his situation. This is one of the points where he's just using buddy points to say, like, well, I can't wait till tomorrow. Could we illegally access their database on the jewelry box, which I don't think Wheelchair Guy could really do. I don't think Sam could really do. But I see a lot of stuff in this movie where, like, computers are doing, like, this is 80 in 87. We're kind of becoming slightly cognizant as audiences of what computers are capable of and what hackers can do. But there's also a lot of things that you'll see in this time period of things that they're really not possible. I think.
Right.
But plus 5 points for the idea to, illegally access the state's database. And further later, even more, like, unlikely, when things are really starting to heat up and the information is not coming in fast enough, he actually asks Sam to plant the line item about the jewelry box into the database so that it'll come up sooner. As we discussed before, the CID is making their own moves, and they've found some witnesses that would tie, the mystery man to Susan, which is bad news for Tom because he is the mystery man. And they've brought in the two witnesses, the boat guy, the guy they rented a boat from, and the the bellboy from the hotel from their romantic weekend. There are let's play a little game. How many people do you think work at the Pentagon, Dave?
Probably a couple thousand, maybe.
Couple thousand? You want to go with 2,000?
Maybe.
Maybe
not. I don't know. It's a big building. Oh, maybe a few thousand.
Yeah, it's more than a big building. There are 23,000 people in the Pentagon. 23,000 people in the Pentagon on any given weekday.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot.
So when you're watching the whole, like, search scenes, or the whole idea, like, oh, we'll have two people at two exits that can watch everyone filing out for the day.
Right.
That's a lot of people. But also we remember, even though the movie doesn't seem to remember, that, or they don't bring it up, that we do know we're looking for someone that was assigned to the Pentagon in the last couple months. So that should have narrowed it down quite a lot, and probably they should have focused on those personnel instead of like trying to search everyone. And probably the people that wrote the movie just didn't actually realize that there are that many people in the Pentagon, or how fucking huge it is. That's a large number. That is a large number of people, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a lot of people to sift through and to, like, lock them in for the day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know if they could get away with that.
Now, of course, they're looking everywhere except at the very top of the organization, which is what makes sense about the movie, is why, like, they don't get around to, like, for instance, they're not looking in Secretary Bryce's office.
Mm-hmm.
They're not concerned about that. But it's only later in the movie, after they feel like they've gone through everything, that they finally start sifting up to the top and thinking like, okay, we got to actually go through the last few areas we haven't looked at, which are like the main information room. And Tom does this like cool, he's about to get caught. He does another little juke, spilling coffee on his pants. This is a good move. I'll give that plus 5 points.
Yeah, definitely. But I liked the coffee spilling. It was definitely a good moment to get him away from the conversation and then like kind of regroup or collect his thoughts.
And it buys him enough time, finally, for the illegally planted jewelry box information printout to finally spill out. And by the way, that printout was just going on forever and ever, right? Whew. Just print out everything that computer.
Right.
Yeah. He's delayed the investigation long enough for the jewelry box printout to finally get into his juicy little hands. And he makes a run for Bryce's office, and that's where we get our final scene of the main story, of course. The goons are right on his heels, but he pulls rank to squeak into Bryce's office and threaten him with what he knows. He's like, "You knew Susan. I have proof. Call this shit off."
Did we talk about the wheelchair guy getting killed yet?
No, let's hit it. What you got on that?
Yeah, Sam basically calls Pritchard over and lets him know that, hey, Tom is the guy in the photo, and I feel like something weird is going on, and I think Tom is trying to mess with the investigation. And I wanted to talk to you, privately, because I'm a little worried about how things are going. And this is where Pritchard kills Sam. Poor Sam. He's trying to do the right thing and gets himself shot. I wanted to point this out as my number 2 worst tradecraft for Sam because, okay, let's say you get really uncomfortable with this secret someone told you and you're like, I think Tom might be lying to me. Let me talk to someone higher up. I don't know if you want to go somewhere that private. Like, I think they were like in a gym or something, or like in a warehouse or whatever, someplace.
It's a basketball court.
Yeah, they're like in a basketball court. There's no one else around. There's a whole investigation going on. Why not just take him to another room with those, like where other people can see them so he's not murdered? I don't know. It kind of felt weird, but everything happened so fast, so I think it wasn't that big of a deal. But I mean, like, my thought is like, okay, I'm like a tech guy that works for like high security, Department of Defense, at the Pentagon type of stuff. I have this guy that's given me a secret, and I'm starting to get a little concerned. Well, if it's for my own safety, this guy's telling me to not say anything, maybe I shouldn't just go picking some random person. I mean, like, how well does this guy know Pritchard? Other than he's like kind of in charge. And if you're going to go to Pritchard, like, why wouldn't he have gone to the guy from the CID with this information? Like, I don't understand.
I maybe have an answer for that. Although going to the major would have been a much better play and make more sense. But, maybe it's because Sam knows that even though Sam and Pritchard aren't direct friends, maybe Sam knows that Pritchard and Tom are friends. And so that's why Sam maybe thinks like Pritchard is a guy he can trust with this revelation.
Oh, that's right. He said, I think he's going off the handle or something. He's kind of going crazy. So he's just like, hey, you guys
he thinks maybe of all the characters, on the board, this is someone he could trust with the information because he believes that Pritchard will always have Tom's best interests in mind. Maybe.
I see.
They could have They could have tweaked that up a little. They could have even made it so that, Pritchard and Sam also had a relationship, Maybe the three of them all knew each other. Then it would have made way more sense for Sam to go to Pritchard. And to be so trusting as to go alone into that basketball court. But yeah, I'll back you on Bad Tradecraft for that.
Yeah.
I mean, not that it's his job to be a spy, but but like you said, he's got responsibilities. He's got a security clearance. He's working with very sensitive information at the top of the Pentagon. He should be smarter.
Yeah. I know, that's just my piece.
Yeah, I like it. In our final office scene, Tom bursts in first. He's waving the piece of paper around that says, Secretary Bryce, call off the investigation. The major comes bursting in right after him. At this point, Pritchard knows that it's Tom. I think Pritchard could have just fingered him, but instead he ushers the major out. I think that's bad. I think that's a bad move on his part.
I don't know. Like maybe he just feels like if he says something, he's going to lose control of the situation, and he doesn't want too many pieces on the board.
Well, what does he expect? Bryce to do about it? It's the major that could have done something about it,
right?
Characters got to do what characters got to do, and movies got to do what movies got to do.
Yeah,
it's a great scene where the way that Bryce has over time become more and more stressed out, and remember, he was never actually fully on board with this whole Yuri lie kind of situation. And over time we've seen him in scenes where he's kind of pushing back, and Pritchard's like, no, fucking shut up and just do what I say. At this point where the truth because there's so many different versions of the truth in this movie, Bryce says yeah, Pritchard, you gotta go.
Yeah.
Watching that betrayal of what Pritchard thought was the situation, it's pretty powerful to me. And remember, it was in the very first scene with Patton, they snuck in the line, I would take a bullet for him.
Oh, I totally forgot about that. That's a nice foreshadow.
Yeah. It's very nice foreshadow. Actually pulls out his gun and just blows his brains out.
Yeah.
That's how fucking fanatical the guy really is. And that's also a weird thing. Have you ever seen that before in a movie or since? Where the villain commits suicide to protect what he believed in?
I don't know that I've seen it in a movie, but there's an anime called The Legend of Galactic Heroes, and there's a cold, calculating character like that helped one of the main characters ascend to the throne. And there's a point in the story where there needs to be a fall guy, and that cold calculating guy determines that he has to be the fall guy, and he becomes the fall guy.
That's amazing, I think.
Yeah, he's a very, that very what's it called? Cold calculating is kind of just very means to an end type of guy, and whatever, it's always for the cause no matter what. And he did some really shitty stuff to help the guy ascend to the throne, and stabbed a bunch of people in the back and threw him under the bus. And you think, oh, this guy is the self-ambitious type, but in the end, no, he's the means to an end guy. He's I am the means, so I have to be the fall guy now, and he does. I'm gonna take it for the team.
The whole Pritchard character arc and the way it ends like this is probably my favorite thing about the movie.
Yeah, I think it was a great way to end it.
And Tom squeaks out of the Pentagon just as someone's like, holy shit, the photo's finally resolved, and it was Tom in the picture the whole time.
Right.
Tom was It's the worst twist. It's the worst. It's the worst twist. That Tom was Yuri the whole time. And let's talk about that now. Let's go back through the movie just a little bit and talk about like okay, if Tom was Yuri the whole time, do all of his actions totally make sense? Before we get into that, I want to ask you what you know about theories of Russian moles in like deeply embedded into like, you know, the Pentagon or the CIA. What do you know?
During James Angleton's witch hunt after Kim Philby was discovered, that there were actually a lot of moles in place in very high political positions.
Okay, but
I don't really have a-
Philby infiltrated MI6. What about Russians infiltrating American agencies?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Well, Philby infiltrated MI6 and then infiltrated CIA because James Angleton and Kim Philby were like passing information together.
Okay.
So, but when that was discovered, James Angleton went on like this crazy like mole witch hunt, and people thought he was crazy, but he ended up finding a lot more moles, and they were like in key political positions in the U.S. government or in military agencies or something like that. So I don't have like a list of like famous ones, but apparently they were there.
All right.
So like the Red Scare isn't just like the Salem witch trials. Like,
Right. There's
Yeah.
there's some basis for it.
yeah, right. Like it wasn't like just pulled out of nowhere. Now I think there was a little bit of overzealous approach to some of the Red Scare, or maybe kind of some advantage taken. But for the most part, there was something there. Like it wasn't just like fabricated.
When I did my Googling, mostly, Google wanted to tell me about like 10 Russian sleeper agents that we caught in 2010. That was like apparently a big thing. I couldn't find anything much about the 80s. But that's okay. Let's assume. So we got presented to us in the fiction of this movie, Yuri, a Soviet sleeper agent, apparently rose up through the ranks of the Navy, got into naval intelligence. It's a pretty good spot for a KGB agent to get into. But what was his mission, do we think?
Well, I think his mission was like at the beginning when I was saying like how he played dumb to get the CIA data. I think he was working as Yuri to get that data. Like it wasn't like he had an excuse because of his position to want that data, and he probably would have passed that data on to the Russians about the sub. So I think he was just to climb the ladder and get as much information as possible.
Sure. And he's got a friend that is working in the Department of Defense.
Mm-hmm.
And even though like in their first meeting, Pritchard teases Tom about like, hey, you were like kind of angling to try to get a job in the Department of Defense, huh? And like Tom is like, no, dude, I just sent you a Christmas card, okay? Chill out.
Right? Yeah.
But that's also it's nice though, it's subtle.
Yeah.
You gotta, you're a Russian sleeper agent, you're trying to rise, as high as you can. You got a friend in the Department of Defense. It sounds like, a guy you should probably be sending Christmas cards to.
Right.
Plus 5 points.
Yeah.
We find out in his final debriefing that, because Tom says, like, I did what you wanted. You're the guys that told me to sleep with Susan. We never find out why. Like, why was that a part of it?
I mean, they probably knew she was sleeping with Bryce, would be my guess.
Okay. Sure.
I don't know how much to put on that, but, I guess that would be it.
Yeah, makes sense to me. Coming up on my plus 5 points and my number one best tradecraft of the movie, which only makes my best tradecraft because we know at the end that he was actually Yuri. was when they're in when Tom and Susan are in one of their little sexy playtimes or whatever. She wants to take a picture of him. That's where we get the Polaroid, that's going to be resolved through computer imagery, blah, blah, blah. If you look at that scene again, considering that he's Yuri, the way that he does not want his picture to be taken makes huge amounts of sense. And the way he plays it as well. He's not like, hey, don't fucking take my picture. He's like, oh, no, I'm embarrassed. Oh, I don't want to do this.
Right.
And then, he specifically, and the way Polaroids, for all you kids out there, Polaroids were, there used to be a time when you took a picture, it went onto a roll of film. You had to take it down to a Kodak office or something, and they'd be like, yeah, you can have your pictures in 2 weeks. And then Polaroid was this amazing new technology where you could take a picture and you could see it within 5 minutes. Wow.
Yeah.
But he also, not only did he resist having his picture taken and kind of threw his arms up in front of him and he's just playing it all kind of cute, he also just playing along. He rips the emulsion off early. And that's something you're not supposed to do. You're supposed to wait 5 minutes with a Polaroid. And again, he does it purely natural, but it looks to me like he intentionally sabotaged having his picture taken. And that is plus 5 points, given the fact that he's Yuri. Don't fucking take my picture. I am a Soviet agent. I don't want my picture.
Yeah. Right.
I question though, why he played the superhero. Like we mentioned, there's a point in the movie, and that's part of what gets Bryce's attention, that he would be a valuable asset, is this super heroic risking his life to save a fellow sailor at sea. If I'm Yuri, I'm not doing that shit.
Right.
I'm fading into the background. I don't think I need to. I don't need my picture in the paper. I don't need to risk my life. Fuck that. What does that get me?
Right.
Doesn't work for me. A couple other weird things. So there's an earlier scene in the movie where Tom meets his Soviet spy master, but at that point we have absolutely no idea that's who it is. And the guy just gives him his mail, and they make some small talk in the guy's apartment. They're totally secluded. They totally had all the opportunity in the world for Tom to give him a full report on what's going on. And, they just don't.
That's weird.
It was only when I was coming through IMDb trivia that I noticed that. There's some other weird stuff too, which is okay. So do you remember this? In Manila, the little kid that steals his bag.
Yes, I remember that.
Okay.
And he's just just let him have it.
Do you recall that at the end of the movie, the Soviet spy master is like, hey, by the way, Moscow wasn't particularly amused by the fact that you just gave him a bunch of dirty underwear.
Uh-huh.
When the kid stole the bag, that was supposed to be a dead drop, or not a dead drop, but a passing. It was a planned thing.
Oh, wow.
But instead of they were expecting to get I don't know, his reports, but they got nothing. And then also when Russian spy master is wouldn't you like to hear native Russian again? And he mentions like some famous Russian novelists, and the Yuri's response is to also mention like two other Russian novelists who are like two really prominent and famous anti-Soviet novelists. So every step along the way, like we're seeing that like Yuri he's not loyal.
Right.
Like they should have got the signal when he fucked up the Manila drop. And then also here, like right in your face, you know, proud Russia, super proud Russia. They don't want to hear like about like these people that write about like how much the Soviet Union sucks. And the guy just like laughs it off.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think Russian guys should have seen the signs that Yuri he's not loyal.
Well, and that's when they just like let him go. He just walks off, and they wanted to like beat him. The goons wanted to beat him up, and the spy master just kind of lets him go. And I actually wanted to mark that as my number 3 worst tradecraft. This guy has a lot of important information about this whole operation, and it looks like he's just going to walk off. I think the movie's trying to say like he goes like, "Oh, he'll be back. Where's he going to go?" And my whole thought is like, "Oh, America."
Right. Straight to the CID.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. I like, you know, and so I was kind of like, I think this was just a cinematic tie-up.
David, I think it's time we came in from the cold.
I'm ready.
Agents, please report for debriefing on this operation. The director will see you now.
I want to hear your final impressions and star rating first. Mine's a little twisted. What do you got on this?
To be honest, you know, I watched it like, you know, like 2 or 3 times for this episode, and I really liked the plot setup. And when the actual kind of no way out situation got started, I thought that was a lot of fun and really well executed. The only big problems that really bothered me was number 1, the dialogue. The whole movie was like, but the other thing is just like it took so long to get to like what they were trying to do with the film, building up on his like Boy Scout moments and the romance and all that stuff. Like I think a lot of that could have been cut down, and then the whole twist at the end. I think you're right. If they had him like have the data on the sub and hand it to the Russians, it would have made it a little bit more interesting to have that random twist. But I don't know about the rewatchability for me with this, just because of all of the things I mentioned. But I'm glad I saw it, because the once you get to the meat of the movie, it's really fun to watch. So I don't know. I'm looking at my 3s that I've given, and I kind of don't want to land it there. I think I'm going to go with a 2.5 on this one. Yeah, because I don't want to say I didn't like it as much as I didn't like our man Flint. But I also don't want to say I really didn't like it. I enjoyed it, but I just don't want to put it with like the company. So yeah, I think I'm gonna go with a 2.5 on this one. Yeah, it's definitely worth a watch if you're really interested in like, you know, kind of setups like this, because there's plenty to kind of draw from, and the acting's really good. Every one of the actors really gave a really good performance, especially if you want to do a character like study on some acting for Pritchard, he really brings it. So I definitely would recommend it as like a good, but I don't know how many times I would want to go back and rewatch this.
I'm really struggling with this one. I feel like it's a 4 for 16-year-old Todd, and it's dropped significantly since then. Even though I really had fun revisiting, a movie that I liked a lot when I was a teenager, and then looking at it again like 35 years later was super fun. But I guess if I had to give a final answer, well, then I'll just fucking call it a 3 because I don't fucking know.
Right. Right.
My number 3 best tradecraft is the way that Tom uses his clout and his friendship with Sam to slow the investigation down. My number 2, good on Tom and on Pritchard for getting ahead of the CID to interrogate Nina, which I also like because it's kind of a twist because like they're both doing it for different reasons, but both of them are really good reasons. My number 1 best tradecraft, assuming that you know that it's Yuri, the way that he interacts with and manages to not having a good picture taken of him. Your best.
My number 3 best tradecraft. This one kind of established Tom as a character who could pull off like the crazy moves that he pulls off. Was when we first see him, like his first day on the job, where he's just playing dumb to try and get the Russian info or the CIA data, for the Russians. I like that a lot. Because it really establishes him as like someone that could pull some of this stuff off. My number 2 best tradecraft was Pritchard returning the Polaroid, and his whole like, oh, what's this? I like that. It was a good move of finding, confirming like, oh, this is the evidence from her apartment. Here's a piece of evidence from here that hasn't been tagged yet. And then my number 1 best tradecraft was Tom confessing to Sam that he's the guy in the picture and that he was sleeping with Susan, but that he needed Sam to slow down the resolution analysis because he needs to get more information because he's pretty sure Bryce is the one that killed Susan.
Right. And I like that number 1 as well because, again, like we talked about, like he doesn't give Sam every piece of information. He just slowly cornered into giving Sam like a little bit more along the way.
Right.
Right. My bad tradecraft, the CIA guy, O'Brien, had every piece of information he needed and a clear open window to get involved, and he didn't follow up. That's my number 3 worst. My number 2 worst, it goes along with the there's some logical problems with the way the investigation structure is built. I think a lot of them are forgivable in the service of movie craft. One that I do not think is forgivable is for 2 special forces, black ops, wet work motherfuckers taking their orders directly from the lawyer of the Secretary of Defense.
Right.
But my number 1 worst is what happens when Pritchard, when Tom dives in front of Pritchard's bus and stops those assassins from doing his stuff. And he just kind of, it's not that he just shrugs it off. He doesn't just shrug it off. They have some heated moments about it. They have some conversation. But it's still my number 1 worst on Pritchard. Like, dude, look at what's right in front of you. Tom is directly sabotaging you. Number 1 worst, minus 5 points.
My number 3 worst tradecraft is the KGB letting Costner go at the end. I don't know. I think it was just like a tie-up.
You don't think he'll be back?
Yeah, I don't think he'll be back. And if he does, I don't want to compare it to the very end scene of The Man Who Knew Too Much 56 that we thought was probably the worst ending of a film we've ever seen, but it was close. It's probably going to make my top 10 worst end scenes I've ever seen. Yeah, it really bothered me. But my number two worst tradecraft was when Sam met Pritchard in the gym. I felt that could have been handled better. Like, one, don't go to this secluded place while there's an investigation going on, and two, why are you picking Pritchard? And I don't know. I just felt like the level of the job the guy had, he could have been, I guess, a little bit safer. Even though he was just like the tech dude. I don't know. But my number one worst tradecraft by far was Bryce parking his car in front of the place that he meets his like mistress with right under the street lamp, and he's like the Secretary of Defense, and he's doing all this like intelligence work, and I just felt like this was just like, I don't know, a loose thread that would have gotten him in a lot of trouble without murdering her. You know, like you don't even need that in the mix, and it's going to get him in trouble. So I don't know. That's my number one.
What does that give us in terms of a park bench rating? Park benches, spies like to sit at them. They really do. And when we have 0 park benches, that means the movie has no basis in reality whatsoever. If we give it a 5 park bench rating, it means it's like the most amazingly accurate. You should be taking notes and learning from this movie. That's our park bench rating system.
Yeah.
Where do you want to start the bidding, sir, Mr. David?
So a lot of this is kind of like high, like just over the top, like here's an intricate situation where two guys are like battling it out. So it kind of makes it seem a little unbelievable, but a lot of the ways that those like over the top type of like, hey, look at this like crazy head game are actually executed are pretty believable. So I don't know. I'm looking at our numbers, and I want to put this above Spies Like Us, you know, but I definitely don't want to put this at Argo. But I'm looking at some of our threes, like Sneakers, you know, Atomic Blonde.
I mean,
those are pretty tasty park benches. I don't know. Like, I don't. We should start
three is a really good place to start, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like right down the middle, because this movie does not make a lot. I mean, it doesn't make any big mistakes.
Right.
You really have to pry around the edges to say, like, would these guys really be able to do this without authority from that guy? You got to do a bunch of wiki reading to, like, you know, to find the errors, and so that's why I kind of want to bump it up. But also, it doesn't have any like massive swing, like solid, super good tradecraft. I don't know. I'm starting to talk myself into a 3.5.
Oh, I don't know. I don't want to put this up at like Spy Game or like Good
Really?
Shepherd.
Oh, okay. All right.
I don't know. I like a 3, but I'm also kind of thinking a 2.5. You know.
I mean, it's true. It's true. Again, it's not a spy movie. You know, if you remove the Yuri twist, then it's which again is completely tacked on and doesn't inform the story at all. So yeah, keep talking. You might be able to drag me down.
I mean, I'm like thinking about like Sneakers being our 3. And there was quite a bit of over the top stuff, but a lot of it was kind of believable. So that's why I'm kind of thinking a 3 might be a good place to go. But I'm also like looking at our 2.5s, like, you know, The Man Who Knew Too Much, From Russia with Love. You know, I
mean, when you start getting into when you start dipping down below 3, we're starting to look at some movies that have some ridiculousness. You know,
yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I think I think the head game is much better than our 2.5. So that's why I feel pretty good about a 3. Because I definitely don't put this at Miss Sloan. We had the Born Supremacy at 3.
Well, yeah. That's partially because it has to do with a, movie about a, super secret super spy. I mean, Born Supremacy's got some fantasy involved.
Yeah, right.
This movie is at least like a lot more grounded at its core.
And that's why I think a 3 is a nice place to put it at, because the head game and like the werewolf game that Tom plays is way above any of the head games in our 2.5s. But like a lot of it that goes on is pretty over the top. So I don't really want to put it up with like some of our more solid park bench films.
All right. You got me.
I like a 3 on this.
You got me. That's 3 park benches for No Way Out, 1987.
And that's the end of our show. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can find us on Twitter at spies_like us. Visit us on our website at www.spieslikeus.net. You know, find out about upcoming episodes. Also, what will really help us out is if you give us a review on wherever you found our podcast, either on iTunes or your Android app or YouTube or wherever you listen to us. Even if you didn't like the show, just give us a review. It'll help us, give us feedback so we can make the show better. And it can also help other people who haven't found the show yet find out about us. Hey, Moira, initiate Protocol 9.
Protocol 9 initiated. This podcast will self-destruct in 20 seconds. The preceding transmission sampled the songs Ice Cold by Audionautics, Enter the Party by Kevin MacLeod, and sound effects from freesound.org. Attributions and links are found at spieslikeus.net. Editing by Todd Hostetler.